Hi, this is MTV214. Thanks for stopping by the channel. Thank you, subscribers new and old. This is Noah of following coming up. H.P. Lovecraft, who was into horror and scary and sci-fi sort of stories and mythology. So I read a story over here called The Whisperer in Darkness. It was on the longest side. It was about 60 pages long. It took a few days to read it. It's another sort of scary story about looking into some sort of mystery that there was some flooding in Vermont and in the waters that some sort of creatures were seen, and there's different ideas like, what is this, that like they're from like the mountains and forest in Vermont, and it's like, what are these things? It's some sort of pinkish creatures, and there's the people in the area go say, oh, like, it's this or that, it's legend. Some people more educated think, oh, like, just nonsense and don't really believe that stuff, but some people believe. And then there's like different like folklore with Native Americans and like the Americans, whites, that they believe different things about it, and that like people won't even like move or go in that area because they think it's unsafe with whatever sort of creatures are there. And there's like investigation into it, and someone who's like the author, he's looking into it, and he's into mythology and different religions and folklore, and he's like looking into this, and he gets into a correspondence with a Henry Ackley, like Akeley, I think that's how it's pronounced, about like, what is this thing. And that man's an educated man, a landowner who lives in that sort of area and saw different things, and is telling the narrator, oh, like, don't publicize about this, like, I'd like to discuss with you. I've seen evidence of this, but let's not discuss about this, that it's not good for the public to go like look into this, it's unsafe. So he goes into a correspondence with this gentleman who gives him like, shows proof. With it takes place in like the early 1900s, so they don't have cell phones and all that. But there's a record that was a blank record that was had recording on it, like you'd record a audio on your phone nowadays, or like, on a camcorder, but recorded audio of some sort of strange sounds coming from the forest, as well as about that photographs of some strange sort of footprints, which are more like claw prints of these creatures, and that they go on like, to discuss about them. And the first letter was more like a letter of introduction, and then they go talk about this different things, and about like different things with folklore in the area, and how the narrator's like, oh, like, it's just a story, that there's folklore all around the world about all sort of things, but then comes to like take it more as truth, because getting this letter and corresponding with the gentleman that lives in the area, who's saying like, shows evidence of this, and then tells all these stories about this, and that like, there's beings from elsewhere, so it's like aliens, and they look sort of like crab-like, it seems, but have wings, so it's like sort of strange, like you don't really know what they look like, and makes a sort of buzzing sound how they speak. So they can speak with human speech, but it's like a buzzing sort of sound. I'm not sure if I could go and articulate how that would sound, like talking, but a buzzing sort of sound. So I guess like maybe on a phone or like computer use some special effect for that. But in it, the Henry Ackley is getting more concerned, like, oh, like, they're coming closer to his house. He has dogs that like, protect his house, and that some of them got into fights and were killed by whatever these creatures are. And he goes into town to get more dogs, and like also has cattle and stuff, and that like, some of that disappears. So he's like and he has like a gun, like, you know, defending himself in his home from these creatures. He's thinking to leave, even though the house has been in the family for 6 generations. So he feels like, you know, a connection, wouldn't want to leave to go to his son in California. And like this, it takes place in Vermont. So it's like basically like go cross country. Then what happens is that they sort of have he's like he writes a letter saying, oh, like, you know, he wants him to come visit, and then he's like, oh, like, you know, sort of changes his tune, that he's like has a letter that's very like worrisome, and then he has this letter like, oh, like, I was mistaken, like I communicated with them, and like it's not what you expect, that they're good, they're trying to help, and that they go travel around the universe and stuff. They're from, it's given another name, but it's basically Pluto, and like Pluto was discovered a year before this was published, around 1920 or 30-ish. I can't remember off the top of my head. It's 1920 or 1930-ish that Pluto was discovered, and but like saying, oh, like these aliens are from there. That's actually like an outpost, and they go even further in space. And that so the narrator is gonna go visit him in person, is sort of like nervous about it, but is gonna do it, and thinks that like, okay, like, you know, I from how he sounds in his correspondence, he sounds like, you know, serious about this, that like he's educated, and he sort of was given like a picture of him at his house as well, so like, you know, knows who's looking for. Someone else goes to help him, to drive him to his Ackley's residence, and Ackley doesn't sort of look like he expected. He's like really old. He's like older, and like his body is sort of sick. He's, and like Ackley apologizes, oh, like I'll feel better tomorrow, and that like dinner is ready, waiting for you, and that your room will be upstairs. So like, you know, to get settled, and had him bring the record with the audio of whatever that creature was talking to people, and the photographs and all the other evidence, had them bring it there. So they discuss it the next day, and so on. And then what happens is that the next night, when like a strange thing is Ackley sort of smells weird, like, you know, some odor that doesn't seem right, and as well as the coffee that he was given, which the narrator doesn't drink. He goes to think maybe it was like poison or something, but Ackley tells the narrator, oh, like, you know, the aliens are good, and that they have a way for human beings to be able to travel into space, that like their bodies can travel through space, that's why they have wings, and that somehow they can do it like with their physical bodies. These aliens can do that, and that humans can do that by removing the brain and having the brain in sort of some sort of like contraption that's hooked up to wires and other things, so they can communicate and like sense what's around them. So it's like, you know, a brain out of a body in a jar, but it has different senses, so it can go and still like live. And that's how people can go other places, and that he sees that in his house, all these things for that, and that like Ackley was gonna go away, as wants the narrator to go too. But then overnight there's all these like, sounds like people talking, and the buzzing sound and other stuff, and he doesn't know, like he wants to go downstairs and see what's up. He doesn't go yet, but then like later on he goes, and Ackley is gone. Just like his hands and his like face are on the chair where he's sitting, and that smell that was not good is gone. He goes to the police to like, you know, report about this, and like that stuff isn't there when after that. But it's a strange occurrence, and like, you know, he's sort of nervous about it, and it's like, okay, like was Pluto, is this planet with these aliens, and it's sort of left open-ended about like, you know, you may not believe him, he had all this evidence, and then all the evidence is gone with the record and the photos when he brings it back. So it's sort of like he was like tricked into it, and maybe that the aliens got to Ackley, and sort of forced him into going with them or something, or he was just like, you know, a lunatic. But you don't, it's sort of open-ended and you can think what it as you like. But definitely an interesting story of like with aliens, and right about the time that Pluto was discovered as a planet in like modern times. Well, it's not considered a planet now, but that's a story for another day. But it was definitely an interesting book. They all seem to have this theme of going like, you know, there's some sort of mystery and then seeking it out and like, what does this mean? So it's interesting to read this book. It was on the longer side, about 60 pages. The one I'm reading now, I started today, is about 60 pages as well. So like some of the later stories in this are 60 pages. I am that far, so about halfway through with the short stories of horror, sci-fi, fantasy of H.P. Lovecraft. Thanks for watching. Subscribe, comment, like, share. See you in the next video.